And Rabbi Resnick basically puts his use to the garments of the high priest. This is what he comments on most. 2 weeks ago, when you celebrated Shemini, and I didn't make it here. That was the Saturday that I didn't make it all the way to Clarksville. But that Shemini was the story of the deaths of Avad and Avihu. And we know that these two individuals, two of the four sons of Aaron, made a terrible mistake on their first full day of service as priests. One of the rabbis that I looked at a couple of weeks ago describes it as the worst day on the job ever. Worst first day on the job ever. And the fire that they brought, what made it strange, had nothing to do with the nature of the fire itself. They brought fire that had not been commanded. And one of the things that I'm sure that all of you have noted as we go through our Torah readings is that God is very specific. He doesn't leave a lot of room for ad-lib, Karen. When he says what he says, he means what he says, and he says what he means. And those two young men, the priesthood, or at least Aaron's helpers, were cut in half on the very first day of service. What we look at this morning, of course, I'm sure you realize has a great deal to do with Yom Kippur, with the Day of Atonement. And that involves some changes. The high priest, says Rabbi Resnick, possessed two sets of holy garments. The set he normally employed were the vestments of gold. And these consisted of 8 items: breeches, tunic, turban, and sash, in common with all the other priests. This is how the rest of the priesthood dressed. And then there were 4 additional garments worn only by the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. These were the 4 garments. The others were the 4 garments shared with the people. These garments, these last 4 garments, all contain gold. The breastplate, the ephod, the robe hemmed with golden bells and pomegranates and woven with gold in the fibers of the material itself, and a golden headplate. And only on Yom Kippur would the high priest wear the second set of garments. We're speaking now about the vestments of white, those shared with the ordinary priests. When the high priest enters the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur and stands before the Ark of the Covenant, he wears the vestments of white, and he is dressed simply in white from head to foot. When he concludes this part of the service and comes out again before the congregation of Israel, he wears the vestments of gold. He puts off the white garments, puts them to the side, and will never wear those again. They were only worn one time for that one sacrifice, that one work before Hashem. As he comes out, he has to wash himself again after he takes off these 4 garments. Then he dresses himself in his entire wardrobe, regular wardrobe, to come before the people. The sages say, Rabbi Resnick put forth a number of reasons why the high priest puts aside the gold garments during Yom Kippur. And he says, the Rashi explains that the holy days, since they come near, or came shortly after the commandments were given shortly after the sin of the golden calf, when Aaron tossed the gold in the fire and look what came out. And the tablets, of course, got smashed. Rashi says that this sin remains as a prosecutor or an accuser against Israel, demanding for punishment for Israel. And during the crucial moments of the service, when the Kohen Gadol is seeking atonement and forgiveness for Israel, it would be inappropriate for him to wear gold, because the gold would be a reminder of the chaos. The Talmud states a prosecutor cannot become a defender. Now, the vestments of white were identical, as nearly as we can tell, to the vestments of all of the other priests. And what that signified was that the Kohen Gadol comes before Adonai within the Holy of Holies very simply, very humbly. He is not to come in splendor, but in pure white. And white, remember, is the color of forgiveness, and forgiveness is what the Kohen Gadol is seeking for himself and for all of Israel as he comes before the ark. Rashi also hints at another reason for putting aside the vestments of gold. He distinguishes between the high priest's inside service, that within the Holy of Holies, and in other rituals unique Yom Kippur, and his usual outside service. For the inside service, only white. For the outside service, in the presence of the rest of the priests and the Levites and all of Israel, he wears gold. Within the Holy of Holies, he appears as a mere mortal before the Almighty. When he returns outside, he is to reflect the glory of the Holy of Holies and the one who dwelt there in the presence of the people. In his vestments of gold, the high priest wears the same materials as those with which the Mishkan, or the tabernacle, was built. Immediately following the instructions for making the tabernacle, Moshe turns to the instructions for the garments for the high priest. They are to be made of the same woven linen and blue, purple and scarlet cord as the inner covering of the tabernacle, the veil before the ark, and the screen before the door. In addition, they contain, as we said a while ago, those threads of gold that are a reminder of the various golden utensils and fittings of the holy sanctuary. The breastplate itself evokes the Holy of Holies. Its square shape recalls the multiple squares of the Holy of Holies, which is a cube. And it is made of gold, as is the ark. Within it are the Urim and the Thummim, through which Adonai would give instructions to the priest, just as he would speak with them. From above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel. And like the tabernacle, the high priest is clothed in layers, but the order is reversed. The most ordinary garments, like the simple tunic, are those closest to the body of the priest, whereas in the tabernacle, the simple materials are on the outside. Then come curtains of blue, scarlet, purple, and finally deep within the Holy of Holies and the Ark of the Covenant. The priest wears blue, purple, and scarlet over the ordinary materials, and the golden breastplate is the most visible, or in the most visible position of all. We are in a position, says the rabbi, to understand fully why the high priest, or the Kohen Gadol, wears the vestments of gold for the outside service when he appears before the people. In his own person, he is displaying the Holy of Holies. He bears the image of Hashem before the people. Within the Holy of Holies, he comes humbly, seeking purification, forgiveness of sin. But it would be inappropriate for him to enter the Holy of Holies wearing the adornment of the Holy of Holies. But before the people, he is dressed as the image bearer of the divine glory. The high priest, the Kohen of Gadol, identifies with us all, and he represents us all. He can bear the image of the divine because all humans were created as divine image bearers. By bearing the image of the Holy of Holies, he reveals the exalted assignment given to all humankind. We are made not only in God's image, but also as God's image, in order to represent him before creation. And it's significant, he says, that our reading of this passage falls every year near Yom HaShoah, which has just been celebrated, the day when we remember the devastation of the Shoah, the Holocaust. And as we recall this ultimate desecration of the human, or the divine image in human beings, and surely the murder of 13 million people, over 6 million of whom were Jews, is definitely a desecration of the divine image. We need to remember ourselves the glory for which Hashem, for which God created us.